Darryl Dawkins broke glass backboards with his bare hands, twice in 3 weeks. The league was so frightened that it changed the design of the rims across the entire country. His nickname was given to him by a man who had never seen a single one of his dunks, a blind musician of world-class fame. An 18-year-old kid from a poor Florida neighborhood, skipping college, went up against grown professionals and silenced every skeptic. But the louder fame thundered, the faster it turned to dust. This is the story of a man whose power shattered glass, whose life ended at 58, and what happened between those points, you will not forget. If, like me, you enjoy looking back at the great NBA legends of past decades, and you're interested in their true stories and little-known facts that are rarely talked about, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support truly helps the channel grow and makes it possible to bring you more videos like this. Thank you. Now, let's continue. Somewhere on the outskirts of Orlando, in a poor district where asphalt cracked from the heat and family budgets barely stretched to buy food, a boy grew up who would later be called one of the most powerful men in basketball history. Darryl Dawkins was born in January 1957, and from early childhood, he stood out among his peers. Height, strength, the breadth of shoulders that one would expect from a grown man, not from a teenager. The basketball court was not just a hobby for him. It was the only place where poverty ceased to matter. There, they did not ask what family you came from or how much money your parents had. There, they counted only one thing: whether you could play or not. And Dawkins could play so well that by his high school years, the entire state of Florida was talking about him. His strength amazed coaches. His leap seemed unreal for a man of his build. Opponents were afraid to engage in physical contact with him. The risk of ending up not simply beaten, but literally knocked off the court was too great. By his senior year, rumors about the young giant from Orlando reached the place from which decisions that change destinies usually come. Scouts from professional clubs began appearing in the stands of high school games, people who usually take interest in college-level players, not teenagers who had not yet finished school. And here began something the basketball world had scarcely seen before. National Basketball Association clubs were accustomed to taking players through college, through years of collegiate basketball, through gradual maturation before the public eye. The path straight from high school into the professional league existed only in theory. It was too risky, too unpredictable, almost untested by anyone. But the more scouts watched Dawkins play, the clearer they understood. Before them was no ordinary talent, but something for which it was worth breaking the usual rules. Power, coordination, leap, instinct under the rim. All of this in the body of an 18-year-old who just yesterday had been going to school classes. The question was no longer whether he would be taken into the league. The question was different. Would someone dare to take a step that would forever change his life, sending a boy from a poor Orlando neighborhood straight into the world of million-dollar contracts, grown professionals, and brutal competition, where there would be no room for childish mistakes? The decision was made in 1975. The Philadelphia 76ers selected Darryl Dawkins in the draft straight from high school, 5th overall, bypassing college entirely. For the basketball world of that time, it looked almost like a human experiment. Commentators voiced doubts openly. Journalists wrote that it was too early for a teenager to go against grown men who earned their living through power battles under the rim. Dawkins found himself in a locker room where his teammates were experienced professionals who had gone through college basketball and had already seen the league from the inside. He was 18. Some players around him were nearly 30. The age difference was felt not only in numbers, but in every day of practice, in every game where he had to prove his right to be on the floor. The first seasons were tough. Dawkins received little playing time. Coaches treated him with caution. Too young, too impetuous, too physically powerful to fully entrust him with responsibility on the court. But it was precisely this raw power that gradually began to attract public attention. When Dawkins stepped onto the hardwood, spectators could feel something spectacular was about to happen. Gradually, a legend began to form around him. He did not just score, he could turn a simple slam dunk into a little show. And then his life acquired the nickname that would become inseparable from his name for decades to come. Legend has it that musician Stevie Wonder, having heard of the power of Dawkins's dunks, gave him a name that perfectly described the effect: Chocolate Thunder. The nickname spread instantly. Fans chanted it from the stands, announcers pronounced it with delight, opponents heard in it a hidden threat. Dawkins went further than a simple nickname. He began naming his own dunks, giving each spectacular slam a separate title, as if they were not athletic moves, but works of art with an author's signature. The Terminator, Landing on the Moon, dozens of other variations. Each new name provoked laughter, delight, and growing interest in his next game. The league had never before seen a player who treated his physical power as a stage for performance. The press called him eccentric. Some called him a genius showman, others a threat to arena equipment. But there were no indifferent people. Every game with his participation drew more attention than an ordinary regular season contest, and gradually, a premonition built. Everyone understood. Sooner or later, this mixture of incredible power, passion, and love for spectacle would lead to something that would be remembered not simply as a bright episode of the season, but as a moment capable of changing the game itself. The only question remained: when exactly it would happen, and how far the man for whom the backboard seemed not an obstacle, but just another piece of scenery, would go. The answer came faster than anyone could imagine and turned into an event that would enter the history of the National Basketball Association forever. On November 5, 1979, in a game against the Kansas City Kings, Dawkins executed one of his signature slam dunks with such force that the glass backboard literally exploded. Shards rained down onto the court. Play stopped. Spectators froze for several seconds, not understanding exactly what had happened. Injury? Accident? A short circuit in the lighting? It turned out that human power had destroyed sports equipment designed for professional loads. But that was only the first act. Less than 3 weeks later, on November 13th of that same year, in a game against the San Antonio Spurs, history repeated itself. Another devastating slam dunk, and another backboard shattered into pieces right during the game. The second incident in such a short span turned a single event into a genuine sensation that spread across the entire country. The league found itself in an awkward position. Equipment that had been considered reliable for years could not withstand the physical power of one specific player. Arenas began hurriedly reinforcing their structures. Engineers re-examined the materials from which backboards were manufactured, and Dawkins himself, meanwhile, received a new wave of fame, no longer simply as a flashy showman, but as a man who had literally changed the engineering standards of professional basketball. After the second shattered backboard, the National Basketball Association made a decision directly linked to these cases: collapsible rim mounts, capable of absorbing excess load during power slams, began to be introduced into the construction of the rims. A seemingly simple technical innovation, which became a direct consequence of one man's power, is still used on courts today, decades later. Dawkins savored this status. He gave interviews, joked about his strength, eagerly spoke about how it felt from the inside to shatter a backboard. The public adored this candor. Opponents, on the other hand, regarded him warily. Nobody wanted to be nearby at the moment of the next such dunk. Fame grew rapidly. Tickets for games featuring Dawkins sold more briskly. The press expected new spectacle from each of his appearances. It seemed that the world had discovered a player capable of combining athletic achievement with pure entertainment, a rare combination that attracted even those who had not previously been interested in basketball. But behind the outer gloss of fame, another, far less visible reality began to emerge. The shattered backboards became a symbol of power, but at the same time, they revealed something else. How fragile, in truth, even that which seems absolutely reliable can be. And this applied not only to the glass on basketball arenas. The Philadelphia 76ers in those years boasted a strong roster capable of contending for the league's highest titles. Dawkins, by then a prominent figure both on and off the court, was among the key players expected to make a decisive contribution in the most important games of the season. The team indeed came close to the pinnacle. The 1976-77 playoffs went well for Philadelphia in the early stages. The club reached the league finals, but there they were met by the Portland Trail Blazers, and the final series did not go in favor of Dawkins and his teammates. The disappointment was palpable. It seemed that only one step remained to the summit, but that step never happened. Several seasons later, the club made another attempt. The 1980 playoffs again brought Philadelphia to the league finals. This time, the opponent was the young and rapidly rising Los Angeles Lakers, with the youthful Magic Johnson on the roster. And again, victory slipped away. The 76ers lost the deciding series, for the second time in a row, remaining without a championship title while being literally one step away. For the team as a whole, those were years of great hopes and recurring disappointments. For Dawkins personally, a period when the brilliance of his playing style began to diverge from actual results. The spectacle of his dunks and shattered backboards grabbed headlines, but they did not bring championship rings to the team. Inside the club, tension gradually accumulated. The coaching staff counted on more stable and predictable play from a center of such magnitude, but instead received an unpredictable showman whose form varied from game to game. The press began asking uncomfortable questions. Could Dawkins become a true leader of a title-contending team? Or was his role limited to that of a flashy but inconsistent roster piece? Dawkins himself, in interviews from those years, tried to maintain confidence, joked about future victories, promised fans a new assault on the finals. But behind the scenes of the team, processes invisible to the stands were already taking place. Club management began considering roster restructuring. Talks about possible trades became more frequent, though they were not openly discussed. Relations between the bright star and the organization expecting more from him gradually grew strained. Each new season without a championship title added tension. And although outwardly it seemed that Dawkins's career was at its peak, recognition, public affection, status as one of the league's most talked-about players, inside the club system, a decision capable of changing everything was already brewing. In 1982, that decision was made. The Philadelphia 76ers sent Darryl Dawkins to the New Jersey Nets. For fans accustomed to seeing him on the court in a Philadelphia uniform, the news came almost unexpectedly. The man who had become a symbol of the team through his phenomenal dunks was being sent to another city, another system, other teammates. In New Jersey, Dawkins spent several seasons, remaining a notable player, but that former brilliance that had accompanied him in Philadelphia grew increasingly dim. Age took its toll, physical condition changed, and competition in the league steadily increased. Newer, younger centers were emerging, ready to battle under the rim with no less energy. Dawkins's subsequent path through the league resembled a wandering. After the Nets, he ended up with the Utah Jazz, then the Detroit Pistons, and finished his professional career with the Denver Nuggets. Each move meant a new attempt to prove that his former power and skill had not vanished. But the results grew more modest, playing time diminished, and the name Chocolate Thunder was increasingly heard in the context of the past rather than the present. Injuries accumulated one after another. Knees, back, years of power collisions under the rim. All of this left its mark on the body of a man whose career had begun with incredible physical power and now relied on painful compromises with his own organism. Weight gradually increased, speed decreased, and the former explosive reaction that had amazed spectators in the late 70s became only a memory. Coaches of new teams saw before them not a rising star, but an experienced but declining center whose chief value lay more in experience and locker room authority than in actual contribution on the court. Young players entering the league looked at Dawkins with respect, as a living legend of the previous decade, but not as a competitor for a starting spot. By the early 90s, his professional career in the National Basketball Association came to an end. The man whose dunks had once made glass backboards shudder across the country, whose name was known even to people far from sports, now faced the question that sooner or later confronts every professional athlete. What to do when the applause from the stands gradually fades, and the league that only yesterday adored you continues to move on without you? After his playing career in the NBA ended, Dawkins did not vanish from basketball entirely, but the scale of his presence in the sport changed radically. Big arenas, thousands of fans, national television broadcasts, all that remained in the past. Ahead was a very different, far less conspicuous chapter of life. Dawkins tried his hand at basketball outside the United States, playing in smaller leagues, trying to prolong his playing career at least at an amateur level. But over time it became clear. The path of a professional basketball player had reached its logical end, and he needed to find himself in a new role. He chose coaching. Not at prestigious NBA clubs, but in modest, far less known leagues and schools, far from big cities and bright spotlights. Dawkins coached young players, passed on accumulated experience, shared stories from the days when his nickname was known across the country. The financial side of life after his career was also difficult. Contracts for professional athletes of that era were markedly different from today's multi-million-dollar deals. The money earned over his career was far from enough for a comfortable old age, and Dawkins, like many of his contemporaries from that basketball era, had to seek additional sources of income after his playing years ended. At the same time, he did not lose contact with fans and journalists. Dawkins gladly gave interviews, recalled the story of the shattered backboards, joked about his own nickname, told the younger generation what basketball was like before the three-point line in its current meaning, before the era of high salaries and the league's global popularity. Gradually, he settled in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where he did coaching work at the high school and collegiate levels. For a man whose name had once thundered across the country, this was a far more modest, quieter life. But it was precisely in this life, according to numerous testimonies from those who knew him personally, that he found genuine satisfaction. Working with young players, passing on experience, a sense of usefulness, all of this replaced the old applause of packed arenas. Health, however, made itself felt with increasing force. Years of power collisions under the rim, excess weight accumulated over decades, typical problems of former professional athletes with heart and joints. All of this created the backdrop against which a far more serious page of Darryl Dawkins' story approached, a page none of his fans would have wanted to read. On August 14, 2015, news came that instantly spread through the basketball world. Darryl Dawkins passed away at the age of 58. The cause was a massive heart attack. For many who remembered him as the invincible strongman who shattered glass backboards with a single motion, this news hit especially hard. The man who seemed the embodiment of physical power turned out to be as vulnerable as anyone else. The reaction of the basketball community was immediate and sincere. Former teammates shared memories. Journalists who had covered his career in the late 70s and 80s published materials on what a unique phenomenon he had been for the league of that time. the National Basketball Association officially expressed condolences, noting Dawkins' contribution not only to the development of the game's spectacle, but also to changing the very engineering approach to court equipment. Darryl Dawkins' legacy proved far broader than mere statistics or total points over a career. He became one of the first players to enter the professional league straight from high school, paving the way for an entire generation of future stars who would follow that path decades later. His slam dunks and shattered backboards directly led to changes in the design of basketball rims that are still used worldwide today. And his nickname, coined by a legendary musician, forever remains a symbol of an era when basketball was just beginning to transform from a sporting discipline into a massive show with millions of viewers. The story of Darryl Dawkins is the story of a man whose physical power literally changed the rules of the game, whose charisma made basketball brighter, and whose fate, full of rises and a quiet, unremarkable finale, reminds us of a simple truth. Fame, no matter how loud it may seem, always remains a far more fragile thing than it appears from the outside. If the story of Chocolate Thunder moved you as it did us, be sure to watch other videos on our channel about the fates of basketball legends from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Links to them have already appeared on the screen.